What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. You can get up to 100 times your money.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
How about listening to the sounds of Istanbul? Beautiful, isn't it? But you can't discover the coolest city in the world just by listening. Check istanbul.goturkiye.com now and plan your Istanbul trip today.
I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on Earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on Earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And I'm a lifetime outdoor storage shed, light brown from Sam's Club.
That was a very specific one.
They're only $4.99.99 through Black Friday.
It's $8.99.99.
Oh, sorry, $8.99.99.
Yeah.
Through Black Friday.
Through Black Friday.
Through Black Friday. That's it.
I love it.
I'm going to probably squat me up one here soon.
Oh, very nice.
I've been eyeing them.
He's just hovering over the cart, just ready to go.
Oh, yeah. Got my coupons.
Got my coupons.
Speaking of coupons.
Yes.
What did you call me last night? You called me something so funny.
Oh, God.
When I was being ornery about something, you called me it started with a C, I think.
Whoa.
Wasn't that?
The only thing I remember calling a C word was our new puppy, and I call her Cankles because
Yes,
she's
you
got
did.
really
Yeah,
fat.
that's true. She's got
really
Cankles.
fat ankles.
Thick-ankled puppy.
She does have fat Pete's. But no, you called me. It was like curmudgeon, but it wasn't curmudgeon.
Yeah, it's something.
You are pretty curmudgeonly.
You remember it, right?
No.
Okay.
I say a lot of things, so
Heard.
but I believe it. Yeah, JT gets ornery sometimes, and
I do.
so
I do.
Yeah,
Crotchety?
Well,
crotchety
anyway.
probably.
Crotchety?
I use crotchety a lot. Yeah, you're a crotchety old man too, so
I am.
that's a good one.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
There's just something. It'll come to me.
yeah.
It'll come to me.
Why don't
Anyway.
you while you're doing that, while you're stewing? So speaking of. Speaking of coupons, if you will, we are running a special right now through December 25th. So from the moment you're hearing this until December 25th, we are doing a special where you can get 50% off all of the Patreon tiers that we have, and that is for 1 month. Once you do it. So it is a great way to get an introduction to the Parajunkie side of things. We've been doing a fix episode every week that's an exclusive Parajunkie episode. And we also live stream most of the recordings that we do. We have group chats. We have really lovely people who are just fun and make us laugh. So I know they'll make you laugh. So it's a good time to be over on the Patreon side of things. It's also the best way to support us.
Can you gift us subscription?
can.
Because that would make an excellent
You
gift.
can gift
Yes.
a subscription. You definitely can.
Yes, you can give your loved ones the gift of scary content.
Boogity boogity.
Boogity boogity. So, Mary...
Codger.
Codger.
You called me a codger.
Yeah.
Codger.
That's a classic.
Yo,
Yeah.
codger.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
But yes,
Keep promoting.
Merry Jinglemas, if you will.
Merry Jinglemas.
So that is the great way to spend your holidays. But other than that, though, we do want to thank some new Parajunkies who have joined us recently. So we want to thank Teresa Frazier, Angela S., Brianna Bruns, Kayla Hauptman, and Sarah Clark.
Excellent. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard. All of
welcome
y'all
aboard.
to the new.
We have some.
I don't know why we're pirates.
Aye.
We have some big stuff coming, y'all.
Yes.
For real. We got it in the works. I've been working on it all day. It's exciting, and trust me on it.
Oh,
We
and
don't.
also the code, if you do want to get the 50% off, is 50 off. 50
Audio
off.
50
so
off.
there you go.
The number and then OFF all together.
50 OFF.
Yep.
So there you go. Go get you some spooky content.
Spooky content.
And-
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah. But speaking of spooky things, today's episode we are going to be discussing the Kozyrev Mirrors, which Chris just out of nowhere, you were like, good idea. Let's talk about the Kozyrev Mirrors.
It's
so
weird.
what brought that to your attention?
So
Yeah.
my first introduction to the Kozyrev Mirrors is like in the 90s. It first came up, and
Yeah.
it was a much more like conspiracy theory, like crazy. Have you heard of these Russian mirrors? And they create a hole in time and a dimensional rift, and they want to put one on the moon and one in Russia, and then there's going to be this thing. So it was this chatter for years and years that kind of just overly got suppressed to this idea of, yeah, that's just more of that weird Cold War psychic nonsense.
Right.
Recently, a lot of the CIA files, 100 pages worth, came out about the Kozyrev Mirrors, and I was
I
like,
have it downloaded.
Right.
Really?
This was a legitimate thing. Nikolai Kozyrev was an astrophysicist, and he did not make the mirrors, but he was the theory. He created the theory that ultimately the mirrors represent the actual experiments that the Russians did with these mirrors. But the thing is, you can download build your own Kozyrev mirror plans. You can do all
There's
these things.
blueprints.
I think there's somebody who built one out west, and he like charges $35 an hour for
Yeah,
people
we're
to
gonna-
sit in them.
we're gonna
and,
talk about
there's
that
all kinds
guy.
of things like that. It's super tempting to be like, I could get some aluminum. I could probably
Yeah.
do this. It seems like a pretty easy thing to build.
What does
But
it look like?
it's just a spiral.
Yeah, it's
So-
shaped like a Fibonacci spiral.
It is the Fibonacci spiral, but basically, so let's say you took a 8-foot tall sheet of aluminum and then made a spiral out of it. Oh. And then you walked into the spiral, into the center of the spiral.
Okay.
If you go into the center of the spiral, it allows you purportedly to access the cosmic consciousness, which is basically the fourth dimension. You can actually view the fourth dimension from the fourth dimension.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see
Which-
what it looks. I'm looking
Yeah.
it up right now.
Yeah.
That looks like a Swiss roll, not no Fibonacci mirror. Or
Well, you have to-
It's the
Fibonacci.
way
You
you're
have to look at it
looking at it.
directly
That's a
from
Swi-
above.
That's a
Yeah.
Swiss roll.
No, a Swiss roll does not have the same
Oh, it doesn't?
mathematics.
Yeah.
Because it has to be a perfect half in order to be the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
Which creates the golden rectangle. Which it's funny because when people talk about the Kozyrev mirror, they very rarely mention that the Fibonacci sequence is in fact one of the key mathematic principles that we've known forever.
Right.
And no one's like, oh yeah, well, I guess that makes sense. Because most people spend their time trying to circumvent the weirdness of what a Kozyrev mirror is. But what we do know is that in the 80s, the Russians did put a lot of energy and a lot of thought into constructing and experimenting Kozyrev mirrors in their attempt to boost their psychic warfare department. So, and the CIA apparently paid very close attention to it.
Yeah, because they were copying it basically with Project Stargate.
So
it's
Project Stargate, weirdly enough, was a separate thing that came to the same conclusions, but Stargate didn't have a device. Stargate was using remote viewing and individuals who could access this on their own. Because ideally, if you keep going into the Kozyrev mirror, you expand your consciousness, and then you don't need to go into the Kozyrev mirror to access the information.
Okay.
Like one of the most fascinating experiments, I think I have this right, was that they took one of these mirrors to like the most northern part of Russia, and they set it up, and they set basically a computer to send randomized images. And so the images in question are the psychic card images. I don't know if anybody's familiar with those, but if you saw Ghostbusters, it's those cards they hold up, wavy lines, triangle, circle, and it's to train ESP. It's you're supposed to be able to try to predict or read the card without seeing it. Well, this computer was randomly picking these while a group of sensitives were in Kozyrev Mirrors receiving them. And through this process, it got to a point where the receivers were receiving the information before the computer was sending it.
What?
And they believed it was because they were seeing through time, because they had broken through the barrier of time and they were receiving this information psychically from a machine. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. That seems like the kind of thing that would be not just noteworthy, but like, change the world kind of stuff.
Right.
But either it's a government suppression or it's a made up story. Those are your
very
choices.
well could be both.
And it could be a little bit of both, right?
Right. So let's get into the deep dive of it. So we kind of already sort of discussed what a Kozyrev mirror is, but the Kozyrev mirror is a specifically designed cylindrical spiral device made of long sheets of aluminum, and it's uniquely engineered to neutralize the Earth's electromagnetic field and other unwanted radiation. Which in the CIA files, I will spare y'all the time of having to read through that and decipher.
It is dense and boring.
It's so boring.
It's so boring.
Essentially, they're like, yeah, it works.
Yeah.
Literally, that's...
It works?
Yes, it works.
Yes.
They said...
And it's not, oh my gosh, it works. It's, okay, you've got aluminum, which is a highly reflective substance. You've got particles of all types of energies moving around. In a spiral pattern, the way it moves inside the spiral causes it to either slow down, negate, or reverse in some cases.
Wow.
They believe that if you spin the mirror in one direction, you have access to the present, to the future, and if you spin it in the other direction, you have access to the past.
Wow.
And now they believe that if you just put a person in and spin the person, they will have the same effect.
Right.
Because we live in a left cylindrical world, which means we're propelling towards the future. But if we were in a right cylindrical world, we'd be propelling towards the past.
So what works about it? Obviously,
so
they can't prove time travel works, but what works
So
about it?
it's not time travel per se. It's perception. It's time perception. It's dilation of time. And that is what they can't prove, and they have measured it.
What?
Yeah.
Basically, time moves slower inside of it than it does outside. And that's
That's
measurable.
crazy.
And they can, but it's not as crazy as you think, because people who live at altitudes know this. Time is different at the top of a mountain than it is at the bottom mountain. And people don't realize this. Your clocks move differently. You can have atomic clocks set exactly the same. If one's on top of a mountain, one's at the bottom of the mountain, they will come back with different times over a 24-hour period of time because time moves differently.
Dang.
And that's what we're learning, especially with the Kozyrev Mirrors. What we're learning is time is not the progression of events. It is a presence. And as a presence, it can only be perceived, not consumed or burned, or, it doesn't pass us. It is.
Yeah.
And our lot in life is that we are three-dimensional creatures. Therefore, we cannot perceive the fourth dimension except where it innervates with us. Which is interesting. There was recently a beautiful series of TikToks because somebody had a mind-blowing moment where they're like, I can prove that the fourth dimension exists. Because they're basically saying that shadow people, when you see a shadow person, is a fourth dimensional being, their shadow in the third dimension. Just like when we have light cast on us, we cast a two-dimensional shadow.
Okay.
So when a fourth dimensional entity is casting its shadow will be three-dimensional and will appear to us as a three-dimensional thing, but it's really just a shadow of a fourth dimensional being. The fourth dimension being something that we can only perceive when it intersects with us. So if I stuck my finger into the second dimension, here's the plate, then that's the plane, they would only see the part of my finger that was in there, and it would just look like a line. That's how time is for us. We can only see this forward progression of it because that's where it innervates with us. That's where it connects with us. If we could look from the fourth dimension, we'd be able to see all of time. We'd be able to see the beginning and the end and everything in between. And since it is, of course, infinite, that means that all possibilities must exist in that fourth dimension. It piles up.
Dang.
Yeah. So
Heard that.
it's pretty dense.
It's dense.
Yeah.
This is astrophysics, physics, astrophysics, quantum physics, and it gets even more harried because we're shoehorning supernatural and paranormal and parapsychology in there as well.
It's true.
Makes me want a Cinnabon.
Right.
At it.
That's the only answer.
Yes.
Cinnabon.
But yes, so the metal is meant to create that Fibonacci spiral, and the person sits in the center. And supposedly it clears both your personal energy field, shaped by negative thoughts, beliefs, and suppressed emotions, and the collective morphogenetic field formed by such patterns. So inside the Kozyrev mirror, the purified space generates a torsion field, and which is basically a powerful force of pure healing energy. This field,
I think that is actually the name of the theory that Kozyrev came up with, torsion theory.
Yep. In this field, which merges with its own, fosters an environment of deep relaxation, peace, and healing. The experience is comparable to a state of profound meditation, but its effects extend far beyond, bringing healing to all levels of your being. So yes, the concept of torsion fields originates from the pioneering research of Russian scientist Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev. His groundbreaking discoveries were further developed by A. Trofimov and V. Kazanachev at the Russian Academy of Sciences. Over 3 decades of research demonstrated that being in the Kozyrev mirror induces elevated states of consciousness, granting access to expansive insights and information.
Dang.
So, these transformative states often unlock deeply buried traumas, limiting beliefs, and restrictive life patterns. By releasing these, individuals open the door to new possibilities, allowing their reality to reorganize in unexpectedly positive and harmonious ways.
Interesting.
And this is a time to point out that basically what they're saying is that through concentrated meditation and dedication of going into these Kozyrev mirrors, people can witness and experience the past, but they can also make changes. And in those changes, it creates kind of a branch effect, which I believe, personally, is where the Mandela effect comes into play.
Yep.
Because what we have now are people who are traveling through time making influences on the time. They aren't doing changes like, killing baby Hitler. What they're doing is they're going back and through an observation stage, creating a splinter. And that splinter becomes the reality of whatever existence we're in. And that becomes this question of, is the act of observing changing what is being observed, which, of course, is a scientific principle that we all have grown to accept. So now it's like, I swear I remember, so vividly remember as a child having this conversation with friends multiple times of whether it's Berenstein or Bernstein. Never Berenstain.
No.
It was, is it Steen or Stein? E-I-I-E.
Definitely Steen.
And it's like, it's
Bernstein.
Berenstain Bears, right?
Yeah.
It's the Berenstain Bears. But we were in Germany at the time, living in Germany. And so Stein was the name that came across. But, we were having these troubles with E-I and I-E. And so it's like, is it Berenstein? I think it's Berenstein. It's Berenstein. Because the kids who were living in Germany longer all wanted to say Berenstein. And we were like, I think it's Berenstein. And then as an adult, we're told that it's Berenstain. And Berenstain just feels wrong.
It's
it
so
just
wrong.
seems wrong.
It's super wrong.
And it's like, how is that this memory, this incredibly bizarre sensation? It's so real to me that I had these motions, that I could remember looking at the actual books and have these very concrete memories, but maybe not. Maybe
Right.
I'm just filling in blanks, and maybe maybe as a child I misread it and just held on to the misreading of it. But it really is bothersome to me that because some Mandela effects just seem like misremembered stuff, and I can accept that I misremember things. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm full. But man, I will always come back to Berenstein as like a hill I'll die on. I remember Berenstein.
Right.
I remember it Berenstein. So yeah, I do think that there's an interesting point here, which is we have been since the mid 80s sending people into these mirrors, and it has become a more and more practiced thing because people are building these things in their houses. People are building these things in their backyards. People are going into these mirrors to observe the past. And in some cases, their influence, their presence, their energy in the past might be changing stuff. We just don't know. And of course, that's, my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. Thank you very much for listening.
There you go. But a little bit into the history of the mirrors. But in December 1990, a team of Russian scientists led by Vlail Kazanachev and Alexander Trofimov, very Russian names,
Very Russian names.
embarked on a journey into the unknown, if you will. So within the confines of the Institute of Experimental Medicine of Siberia, these scientists sought to translate Kozyrev's theories into tangible experiences. So Kozyrev's mirrors were used in experiments related to extrasensory perception, or ESP, conducted in the Institute of Experimental Medicine of Siberia, a division of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And they named it after the Kozyrev mirror after Russian astrophysicist Nikolai Alexandrikov Kozyrev.
They wanted to be as Russian as possible.
Literally. Who, after 10 years of forced isolation, was...
He was in prison.
He was in prison.
I think he went to like the Gulag, literally Siberian prison. Like,
yeah.
And which is why Kozyrev does not have more of an impact on society, because during his incarceration, I want to say that they wouldn't allow him to do work. Mm-hmm. So he actually got outpaced. So like physics like expanded and did leaps and bounds while he was in prison. And when he got out, he was behind. Mm-hmm. He was actually woefully ill-equipped for the decades worth of advancement because he didn't have any access to any information or equipment or anything like that.
Exactly. And because he was in forced isolation, it led to his greatest discovery of his life, which is a theoretical time device that he failed to complete before his sudden death in 1983.
How sudden?
How sudden? Why, a man?
He's like, I have time machine in house. I'm dead.
Literally. It sounds like he knew too much.
He might have known too much.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So Dr. Kozyrev developed a theory in the 1970s where he concluded that all time is simultaneous and infinite, that past and future are just metaphors. There is no past or future. There's only now. Just sounds like one of those signs that you get at like Joann's.
Painted on beechwood. There is no
Yeah.
time, just now.
There's only now. So
The only time
Well,
is now.
it's my my time is a big clump of clay, a big lump of clay. We're just in it. And we choose to perceive it moment to moment, or we can only perceive it moment to moment, but it does exist in all directions and is complete. It's already done. The book is written, and we're in it.
Exactly. He also believed that an interaction occurs between time and the human brain, and that's why there are concepts such as intuition or foresight. So as soon as the device was built, strange phenomena occurred around the village. Disc-shaped objects hovered around the lab. What? Balls of energy appeared and disappeared. The northern lights became so bright and vivid that they appeared to have physical shape.
Yeah, they said that the northern lights were broadcasting the thoughts of the people inside the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Is there aliens involved?
So
yeah.
people
Yeah,
like
there's so much.
So if we build one, we put it out in a parking lot right here because we could do that. And we put. You think if we did like a live stream or filmed it overnight or whatever, you think we see anything?
possibly
Possible.
How we do it? Let's do it.
with a lot of effort.
I have the plans on my phone.
You literally can download blueprints online.
I was actually
it's crazy.
very seriously thinking about building one simply because there is it's just one of those things that novelty-wise, it's like it would be worth the experience.
Yeah.
Because so far there hasn't been a whole lot of like negative. It's not like people go in and go insane. It's mostly people go in and get glimpses of the future or perceive things in the past. I think there was a story that it does sometimes create ball lightning, which I don't know if you've ever seen ball lightning. It's very scary and very strange. It is literally a ball of electricity that just floats around.
Yeah. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people, and it's funny because the first time I saw like a video of ball lightning, it was, one of those paranormal videos, like, it's a ghost. I was like, I don't know what it is. And I looked it up and like, oh, that's just ball lightning. I was like, I'm sorry.
Just
Back
ball
up.
lightning.
Don't say just ball lightning. That's a ball of lightning moving very slowly and deliberately down.
Oh yeah, that is scary.
the street.
It is.
Yeah. It's very weird.
If I saw that, I'd be shocked.
Yeah. Bruh. Anyways.
Bleh.
So,
What?
ew. Anyways.
Sorry, I'm pun intolerant.
So inside the lab, everyone that approached the device felt an unexplainable sense of dread. And when the first subject finally sat in the chair, a flash of energy erupted that stunned everyone in the lab.
Oh, there's that ball lightning.
Yeah, there's the ball lightning. The device worked. Not only did it boost people's psychic abilities, it also enabled them to view any place in the world, and soon they could view any place in time. And these experiments confirmed a theory that time, as we know it, does not exist, which is too existential for my brain. Thus, human consciousness tapping into time energy, but time can also be influenced by human consciousness, by thoughts, and by feelings, which can affect the physical world. Yep. And because time is physical energy that could be sped up or slowed down, time can also be concentrated and redirected. Yep. Kozyrev then unveiled the theory that shocked the world. He said a mirror could be made that can bend absolutely anything, including time. Time travel is possible through a mirror. And then he built a machine to prove it.
Whoa.
Yes. In the modern studies...
And then they killed him.
Immediately.
Let's not forget, he made this announcement and then very shortly thereafter died.
Suddenly.
And they didn't say how?
No.
Bullet through the face.
I mean, listen. This is the
this is Russia. This is USSR.
Yeah,
this
yeah,
isn't
this
even
is
like this
exactly.
isn't Russia. This is
Russia's bad now. You think how bad it was back then.
Soviet bloc, where they're
Yes.
like, "Do you make discovery? No, you know make discovery. I make discovery of gun in face."
And that is exactly, I'm sure, how that went down. But
Exactly.
now, in the modern studies, typically the individuals who were put in the center had psychic abilities for remote viewing or astral projection. They particularly wanted that in the beginning. But they were put in a helmet with wires, which if you look up some of the photos of it, you'll see the first one that usually comes up is this guy with a big helmet that has like a bunch of wires that looks like a, like a conspiracy suit. But
Or in Ghostbusters, Rick Moranis has that helmet with all the wires coming off of it so they can look at his brain.
Exactly. And so the wires were attached to the machine. The participants, like Chris was mentioning earlier, the participants were given random symbols that were generated by a computer. Then the recipient in another location across the world would get it, and they had a 95% success rate at this.
Which is insane.
Exactly.
Insane.
That is so insane.
Like 60% is considered psychic phenomena.
Yeah.
95%?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Right.
Wow.
They're like, if you get 1 in 3, they're really excited.
Exactly. So their audacious claims resonated like ripples through time. Successful transmission and reception of signals from past and future episodes using the Kozyrev Mirrors. So the mirrors purportedly elicited profound psychophysical effects in their subjects, a bunch of changes encompassing blood pressure, heart rate, body temperature, mood, perception, memory, and even consciousness itself. So subjects who go into the Kozyrev mirrors are transported to a realm of surreal experiences. So participants claim to have encountered glimpses of our past and future selves, spectral apparitions of past events, and even transcendental out-of-body experiences. And so they believe those are echoes from the Unknown Challenge, which is a very boundary of human consciousness and reality, prompting introspection on the intricate tapestry that intertwines our perceptions with the enigma of time. So other participants, though, did have experiences that were a little negative. One participant claimed he couldn't stay in the machine for more than a few minutes because it caused him severe anxiety attacks with feelings of dread and doom.
I count
could
that
just be
as
something about
claustrophobia.
him. That is true.
Because it's a claustrophobic looking thing. When I first saw one, I was like, oh, it's kind of like a upright sauna machine. You know, it's just a tube that you kind of stand in the middle of. But in order to get to the center of it, you have to get into a smaller and smaller encapsulation. So like you walk through the opening and then you get into like where the inner spiral is. And now you're like this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, I would imagine that if you have any sensitivity to that kind of confinement, you would not like it. You would not appreciate it.
And Claire asked if any of the science went into possibly building the CERN machines, which is very possible. I mean, if they had the information on how to do it, I wouldn't be surprised.
So I would imagine to some degree, although CERN was more interested in the Boson-Higgs particle, the God particle. So that is a kind of a different field, same application in a lot of ways. That's worth a deep dive too. So we should probably look into it. But I think that CERN was not interested in time as much as it was looking at the actual material of reality. And they did punch through supposedly to 11 dimensions, which is my brain I can't
compute that.
I spend a lot of time thinking about the fourth dimension. So when you're like, we detect 11, it's like, what does that even mean?
Right.
Like you know, you didn't. It's like, now you're just making stuff up. But I do think that because it's all physics, really, when it comes down to it, it must play a part in it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how directly they would pull from Kozyrev, because Kozyrev was, I mean, this is out there. This is some out there stuff. And while we are looking at what seems to be a very scientific approach and very documented, highly documented, it also still has never broached the common scientific community and is probably still thought of as very fringe. Yeah. So we can't speak to it as saying, oh, well, this is you know, the truth. What we can say is, this is what's available to read and learn about this subject. And the subject is fascinating, endlessly fascinating.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is. And I do find it interesting that the CIA took enough time to be like, yeah, it definitely disperses radiation.
Right.
And things like that.
And it has a measurable effect on, you know, the surrounding. It does put out a certain level of radiation here. It does, disperse radiation here. So yeah, it's fascinating, and it makes me wonder what wasn't released. You know,
right?
You know, because they probably have a lot of stuff that they just didn't release.
That is very true. So some of the applications that they use the Kozyrev mirrors to basically elicit is for parapsychology. They use it to investigate psychic phenomena and altered states of consciousness. For alternative medicine, for purported therapeutic benefits, and also space exploration. Some researchers speculate that understanding Kozyrev's theories might aid in advanced propulsion systems or space-time manipulation.
Well, because the construct of like deep space travel, our main obstacle there is the time it takes, because we measure time and space in this kind of linear fashion. That is so many light years away. That is a time constraint. However, if you had a machine that basically said, okay, all time is in one big ball and you can just choose where in the ball you want to be. So our astronauts no longer have to get into a ship. They get into one of these mirrors and they're able to pinpoint someplace deep in space, because if time doesn't exist, then space is compact. It becomes all one thing. You can just connect those dots, and then time isn't an issue. Getting there you don't have to burn time to get to these far places. The same with healing. You go in and you access the healthy version of yourself, whether that is an alternate version from another dimension or a younger version before you got the illness. you could regenerate all of those diseased cells and organs and ideally live forever. You know, these are heady concepts, and certainly not what I'm saying is happening, but these are the theories. Those are the theories on the table.
Exactly.
We're basically saying if we could eliminate time, then there's no such thing as distance, because distance is measured actually in time. How long does it take to get there?
Right.
And so we now have to really rethink of what space is, because if space is a dimension beyond time, so time rests inside of space and space is encompassing time, we only perceive it 2 dimensions off. And it may be that the entirety of the universe is as simple as closing our eyes and opening them again.
100%. But like you had mentioned, there is a lot of skepticism that surrounds this.
We're not saying that this is the answer, everyone.
Right. Yeah, and it's definitely by the scientific community, there is a lot of questions that they have. But as groundbreaking experiments kind of reverberated, they were met with a lot of skepticism at this time. So the scientific community has a critical eye, as you can imagine, and scrutinized the methodology, outcomes, and interpretations that came from these experiments. So there was a lot of accusations of fraud, manipulation, and fantastical delusion cast basically doubts upon the mirror's revelations. So the biggest concerns were lack of rigorous evidence. So most studies lack reproducibility and methodological rigor. So there is also subjective effects. So many reported phenomena that are anecdotal and could be attributed to placebo or psychological suggestibility.
And they also chose the places of their experiments by their energy density. They wanted to be very high and north because of that. They believed that the energy was compact there, and reaching those places because there are no known settlements outside of Russia that are in that same ring. And it's like, do you want to go to the Arctic and try this? You know, it's a difficult get to try to replicate these experiments because they were doing it in like the highest latitude where there was living people.
And most scientists kind of consider this a pseudoscience label. So the mirrors are often dismissed as pseudoscience due to their reliance on unproven concepts like time energy and biofields. There's also ethical concerns because experiments involving altered states of consciousness can pose risks to participants without proper safeguards.
Yeah, and there was, so in America, we were doing experiments along these lines using drugs.
Yeah.
LSD, MK Ultra. We were using drugs to alter brain chemistry in an attempt to suggest that our perception is limited by our brain's rigorousness. And if we could loosen it up, we could do that. And there's nothing saying that these experiments didn't also include hallucinogenic drugs or other things. So they may have omitted that information, or they may have, not thought it was worth noting that they, all dropped acid and went into a mirror.
Totally possible. Yeah, and I think really what pissed off the science community the most is because they pointed out the divergence of Kozyrev's theory from the established principles of physics.
Oh, yeah, no, they cannot stand that. Because, and I'm trying to, again, I am not a physicist, nor am I a good mathematician by any stretch of the imagination. But I want to say that the Germans had a different method of physics prior to World War II. Their conclusions and their equations were different. As a matter of fact, I think it's called German physics, which led them to advancing like jet technology and things like that didn't use the same equation that we accept generally as Western scientists. And it was like the Western scientists just quelched it as pseudoscience is not real as anything like that. But the truth of the matter is, if somebody else can come up to an answer and get the correct answer, but went a different route, it's probably worth noting. And it seems like at the time, the Germans were getting to a over unity device. They're getting to a place where the physics was seemingly suggesting that you could create vehicles that did not need as much energy as they put out. Mm-hmm. And it's like incredible, impossible. Western science is like, no, let's put a kibosh on that.
Right.
That can't work. That shouldn't work. We can't use that because it says that gravity isn't a force that we need to reckon with. So, yeah, if you challenge Western science will always say, again, look how reproducible this is. Look how solid it is. Look how we came up with this. But if you've ever seen like how Asians do arithmetic versus how the West does arithmetic, if you look at the problem, the way they write it out, if the answer's the same, then the method
doesn't matter.
It has value. And so the fact that we would be so dismissive of other sciences that come up with the same results, I'm worried that we have fooled ourselves into a scientific corner where we are so dead set on, well, we got the answer, so it's done. And somebody else is out there going, but I got the same answer a different way. And they're like, nope, we got the answer, and this is the way we have to do it. So it's such a quandary.
It really is.
That the scientific method, in so many ways, it became so rigid. And it's like, the scientific message was supposed to be so that we could always advance.
Right.
So that we could always question, so that we could always advance. But it became an anchor. And it's like, no, we're going to hold tight. We're not going to advance. We're going to build on this theory. It's like, well, what about all these exciting theories out there? What about, all these exciting quantum theories out there? They're like, nope, we're going to stay right here.
But yeah, it's even though it is technically French science, there are people that are trying to recreate them. There's a whole Reddit thread of people trying to DIY Kozyrev Mirrors, which is super interesting. But there is a guy out in Los Angeles that has one. And he calls himself Cosmic Shaman. So
there you go, Cosmic Shaman.
Yeah. So first,
let's try to get him on the podcast.
Right. Honestly, we probably could. He runs all this through a Facebook page, which is kind of funny.
I'll look him up in 1 second.
Yeah. So the people who are doing DIY ones typically are downloading blueprints that they find online of how to create these. The only thing that I question with it is it seems like one of the important factors of the actual mirror is the helmet that's attached to it.
It's not necessary.
So that's just so wild.
But the helmet is not. So the helmet is to is to monitor brain activity.
Okay.
It's not to elicit anything.
I see.
Because they're using this helmet specifically to see what parts of the brain are active and inactive at various points in meditation. So yeah, you don't need it. You just go in and meditate.
Well, there you go.
And that's another thing when you think about other like world religions that have enlightenment as the goal. One of the things that you almost always hear is that they climb to a top of a mountain. And they meditate, and they become enlightened. There's a chance that they are tapping into the energy, the very same energy that people are trying to replicate in the Kozyrev Mirrors, simply by going to a higher altitude, experiencing a different pull, both of gravity and time, and accessing this ability to see more and sense more and perceive more of time itself. And then they come back enlightened. So there's something to it, I think. There's something to talk about that culture, for as far back as you can imagine, have these notions that if you get away from society, that's a big one, get away from all the people, make that pilgrimage out into the wilderness and meditate, that you are given insight, you're given visions, you see clearer. Maybe it's because humans absorb this radiation or give off this radiation, bounce it around without any regard of its ill effect on each other. And if you can get away, if you can get up above, you might be able to access this torsion theory that they're talking about. The suggestion is that time is pulling on us, and we can use the tension of that pull to go the other way. And maybe that's the answer to enlightenment.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's very possible. The Cosmic Shaman Man, just real quick before we wrap things up, I pulled his bio from it because I do think it's interesting. And honestly, I would, if we could get in contact with him, I'd like to ask him questions. Because Mylea said, I'm curious to know if anything has happened. I would like to know that too, because I haven't seen anything on that.
And I'm guessing this is the person. Because he kind of rents it out as a therapeutic tool for people, and people go into it. And it seems to be sort of in that new age health kick notion of going into this thing to repair and heal yourself. I think that is his primary goal, is helping people heal from long-term illnesses and pains and things like that. And unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that the placebo effect becomes very much in question, because when you go through such extremes, when you go to something that is so out of the norm, you find yourself believing, because of the ritual you underwent, because of the money you paid, because of the contraption you stepped into, because of all these things, it reinforces internally that you are attempting to get better, and that can heal you. That can have healing properties.
Mm-hmm. So the owner's bio says, "My name is Alexei, and I am originally from Russia. When I lived in Moscow, I worked with the Center for Human Bioenergetics. This center has had Kozyrev Mirrors, in which I organize sessions for people. A few months ago, using my knowledge and technology, I installed the Kozyrev Mirrors in Los Angeles, where I began hosting individual and group sessions." So it seems like he might have some information.
Absolutely.
From when he was working for
I had no idea who he was. I just knew that there was somebody out there doing that. That's cool. Maybe we should make a road trip.
Yeah.
Go see the Kozyrev Mirror.
I found him. Yeah.
Yeah, see how much a session costs.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
we'll schedule a little sesh.
Yeah.
Little seshy sesh. But nonetheless, y'all, the very captivating tale of the Kozyrev Mirrors.
It's interesting. I'm sorry. The bottom line of this is, how interesting is this?
It's very interesting.
There's a wealth of information out there about it. There's so much, it's just fascinating. And it very well could just be a conflated system of an experiment that somebody once did. But it sticks out, it just feels like there's something to it. And it certainly raises conversation, allows you to talk about life and time and everything else.
Yeah, it pretty much, it intrigues us, if you will, to, maybe expand your imagination a little bit, question our perception of time.
I'm going to say there's other devices out there that are probably worthy of this kind of dive. I want to say there's a device called, that a man named Searles came up with, the Searles device, which was an over unity device, which means it was an engine that produced energy without consuming it. And I want to say he made a flying saucer. But that's another podcast.
That's another episode.
We'll get to that in another episode.
Yeah. So maybe one day we can find ourselves in a Kozyrev mirror and see what happens. Maybe we'll come out super enlightened or with panic attacks. You never know.
I'm going for panic attack myself.
Yeah, probably. But thank you all so much for listening to today's very intellectual episode, very scientific. So hopefully you enjoyed and made it all the way through here. If you did have a good time listening and you want to hear more from us, go check us out on Patreon and consider becoming a Parajunkie. Otherwise, you can follow us on all our social media platforms under Haunted City Podcasts. And if you like true crime, go check out our second podcast, From One to Wicked, which is all true crime related. So with all of that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.